Welcome back to Ion Radio. I'm Ken, and today I have a special guest joining me. I got an opportunity to spend a few hours with Josh Derksen, designer of BattleTech Aces, and we covered a lot of territory. We started with how he got his beginnings in game design, pushing through Terminator Genesis, Rise of the Resistance, Snapship Tactics, and finally ended talking about Scouring Sands. It is worth noting that in preparing for this interview, I was looking through my vast game collection and was astonished by how many games that I own or printed out, as is the case with Heroes of the Aturi Cluster. But all this that Josh had his hand in designing. So before I fanboy out here, let's get right to Josh Derksen and my interview. Hello and welcome back to Ion Radio. I'm Ken, and today we have a very special guest. A lot of you might know who he is from some of the products that are behind me, behind him. Welcome to the program, Josh Derksen.
Hey, Ken. Nice to be here.
So you are the designer of Scouring Sands, the entire BattleTech Aces product line. And then also on the channel, we've got the Star Trek Alliance stuff that you've done. I know you have a variety of other games like Snapship Tactics over here. You did the Terminator games and everything else. So you've got a whole line of stuff behind you. But that's one facet of you. Josh, what can we say about Josh yourself?
Well, I have been, let's see, I am sort of a hybrid game designer, developer, and graphic designer. My entire journey through the industry has really been both. Although now, aside from Snapships and BattleTech Aces, mostly doing graphic design work in the field. But yeah, I've been at it for, I think it will be professionally, I think it will be 10 years in February. So getting there. 9.5 years now in the industry, and I've got about 35 published titles that I've worked on under my belt, where I've been designer or developer. More than that if you count graphic designer only.
I was on Board Game Geek and starting to go through the litany of things that you have, and there were games in there that I didn't realize that you were directly involved in,
Sure.
or were part of it. It was just a lot, and then when I started pulling stuff to put behind me, clearly I am a fan of your work.
Pre-BattleTech Aces, I love it.
Definitely pre-BattleTech Aces, and somewhere in the cave of games I have here, I have a printed out copy of Heroes of the Aturi Cluster.
Oh, very nice. Right back to the beginning.
Very back at the very beginning, and I'm sure you've got a fun story on how that came about. Was that really where your game development kind of started?
Yeah, I mean, I had done some. We'll back it up. Well, we can go all the way back to the very beginning. I discovered miniatures games at a fairly young age. I was probably, I want to say, 8 or 10, something like that.
Okay.
At a local Star Trek convention in the Toronto area called Toronto Trek. Someone there was a demo agent for DreamPod 9 and was running Heavy Gear back in the second edition Heavy Gear rule set era. And I had never seen, like, as a kid, like, you know, you get exposed to like model trains and like all these other like dioramas and stuff that people build. I had never seen people playing a game on something that looked like that. And then plus they had like cool robots to boot. That'll be a recurring theme. But I was like so enamored with it that I ended up like getting very into Heavy Gear over the course of like the couple days of the convention. And of course, you know, in the intervening year that I'm away, I've gone and bought a box of models. I've painted them super bright, like red, like fire engine red, no camo, nothing. They are a complete eyesore. I come back the following year, and the guy who's running the table has the good graces at least to smile and nod as I play with all of my own models on their table. And they're not horribly painted, but they're certainly not as nice as his.
Sure.
But I know the rules. So by about the second day of the second year of doing this convention, I'm like teaching new people the game. I'm like running the table and making sure like the phases are going, calling the shots. And he's just got this little like junior GM like running around. And I think about those days a lot. I think as a very foundational core memory in my career as a game designer, developer, and miniatures gamer specifically. So fast forwarding a little bit from there, um, I went to graphic design school in '06, and when I did my year-long sort of thesis project in 2010, I was the only person in my sort of graduating year who basically said like, no, I really want to make a board game. And they're like, well, that's not really enough of a final project. I'm like, are you kidding? Have you seen what board games look like now? Like they have packaging, they have book design, they have all these punchboard cardboard pieces, they have like physical component design if I'm going to make models, which I did. That was back when 3D printing was like very much in its infancy still. The shop at OCAD, the Ontario College of Art and Design, had a single resin 3D printer, and it was like in its own room. It was like a giant box. A tech had to operate it. Like it was very new. But I was able to do some 3D printed models for the first time ever. And really that project, like I convinced them that yes, this is worthy of being a final project, and did it. It got some play testing. I wouldn't describe it as a good game. I would describe it as a playable game.
Okay.
But I was very happy with it as a like, this is the first time that I really tried to do something at that scale. Try and make the whole thing soup to nuts. And the experience of doing that really convinced me that I liked it. And so I started doing, after I graduated, I started going to like board game design or board game prototype, like playtest nights, and had probably 3 or 4 different games that I had been kicking around. And it wasn't really until I got super into X-Wing. When did X-Wing come out? I think 2014 or so.
2013, 2014, somewhere right around there. Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine, I'd been playing Star Wars miniatures with a regular group since the beginning. And a friend of mine was like, you really got to try X-Wing. Like, I know you may be like, you're a little burnt out on Star Wars games. We played so many. But like, this game's real good. I know you played like Wings of Glory. Like, I know you'll like this style of game. So just give it a try. So he hands me a list and literally plugs me into an 8-person tournament at this little mini local convention. He's just like, you played Star Wars minis. You get the hang of it. Learn by doing.
Yeah.
And it was a little awkward for the other people I played against because I think they had already played a few games and I was literally learning. But in combination with the very good squad he built me and gave me, I managed to sweep that tournament pretty handily, like 3-0, just 8 people. So I was like, oh, he never played before. He'll be good.
Yeah.
But yeah. And that was the beginning of X-Wing, which then led into I played hundreds and hundreds of games of X-Wing and ended up getting a cold email on Board Game Geek actually from, I guess, one of their people who was just not project manager, but I think sort of community manager person. And they asked me if I would playtest for X-Wing. And so I got like very much into the X-Wing first edition like playtest pipeline. This would have been pretty early on in the X-Wing days. But like I was playtesting it on the side under NDA, and I was working on a bunch of stuff with my local club because somebody who was running our like local group that we play every week was like, oh, I really want like a campaign so that we can have like a narrative element to our games. I'm like, cool. So he sends me this Word document that's like 4 or 5 pages. It's just like chicken scratch. Like to call it a design is ambitious. And I realized like, oh, well, I see kind of the vision here, but I don't really think the implementation is going to work. And further than that, who wants to play the Imperials if all the Rebel players have all these bells and whistles and fun toys they're going to get? Like they're playing D&D and someone gets stuck being the DM.
Right.
The DM has no fun tools. And I was like, for a role-playing game, GM-less RPGs exist, but they're kind of few and far between, and I don't think they're that popular. But like for a tabletop game, it couldn't be that hard to just like automate a reasonable opponent to fight against. I mean, I've been playing Pandemic and stuff, and co-op games were not super new, but still kind of on the rise back then. They were uncommon. But I literally just went like, how come no one has thought to do this? And just sort of took it upon myself. So I would I would spend the Monday through Thursday in the evenings and on lunch like assembling a scenario to run for X-wing, and then on Friday night we'd play it, and then I would take it back and I would workshop it, and it would go into this hopper. And the conveyor belt just kept getting longer and longer because it went from like 2 scenarios to test and iterate to like a dozen. And when I sort of hit the dozen point, even this automated opponent that I had written for X-wing at the time is just basically a card and roll and lookup table.
Right.
A lot of graphic design sort of know-how I think got put into that, like the user experience of like what are the steps, how do I process through it and roll and look up. That really informed a lot of I think what really became integral to all the other projects I worked on after that in a professional capacity. But yeah, Heroes was such a kind of weird time because I was just doing it all entirely for fun with no plan of like where that would go. And I had graduated school, I'm still doing layout stuff, and I was like, well, nobody ever really makes their downloadable thing look nice. It's usually like a Word doc that you can
Right.
download on Board Game Geek or something. It's like, well, I know how to do better than that. Why don't I try making a writing this whole document and laying it out, because I haven't done long form book design in a while, and I'm nervous I'm going to be a little rusty with my graphic design degree. So I do that. And it's not too long until I have what looks like pretty much a published, finished product in the release for Heroes of the Aturi Cluster. That's about 2015, September 2015, I think. And so it pretty much blew up. I posted it in a couple of places, and some friends of mine posted it on everywhere else. And I was hosting it from my Dropbox account, which was a very dumb thing to do because it immediately crashed. Like I got all the bandwidth flags tripped on like day one. So we did a bunch of other stuff and kind of fixed that. But yeah, it was wild. It was incredibly well received. People were blown away that it looked the way it did, and then when they played it, they just really fell in love with it. And I was actually very humbled the last time I went to Origins. I guess it was 3 years ago now. Someone was playing it. Someone had it on the event schedule at Origins, and they were playing like a Learn to Play X-wing, full-on Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, and I think he had 6 players signed up to play it for most of the con. And it was like, I don't know if it was the same batch, but they were in it.
It's funny you bring that up because I was just looking at the Origins events, and
Yeah,
for curiosity, because
they may be doing it again.
well, they are doing it this year. I think it's Friday. They've got to learn to play X-Wing first thing in the morning, and then it's all day of Heroes.
That's
And
fantastic.
if I make it out to Origins, I may have to actually sign up for that just because it's been a while since I played with Heroes, to the point to where I've actually found like a couple people that have done some STL files to take those original templates, which again, somewhere I have. But you
Mm-hmm.
had everything printed out in nice format, and then I like put them up on cardboard so it actually looked
Yep,
like a piece and everything. I'm sure
100%.
I'm not the only person to do that. Uh, but it was such an engaging experience. I loved the way the Empire fighters moved around, and it was just such a simple system to get into X-Wing. In fact, I know I got one or two friends of mine to be able to start playing X-Wing through Heroes.
Yeah, it takes the
And
pressure off, right? We'll touch on this again, I'm sure, as we kind of move through the games, but like there were two things that were magical about it that I kind of discovered. And the first is it takes the pressure off of having to play what is normally a head-to-head game.
right.
So you can have these kind of experiences playing this style of game without the head-to-head antagonism or like performance anxiety, really,
Hmm.
right? It also means that like if I'm really into a game and I want to onboard you into a game and you don't know the game very well, I'm not just going to crush you on the first play, or I
Right.
don't have to play with the biggest handicap I can imagine for us both to have a good game. Um, the other part of it that was kind of amazing, at least with Heroes, is somehow the TIE fighters, they were good, but they didn't play like as slick as a human opponent.
Hmm.
And it was actually kind of to their advantage that that was the case. They felt it, playing that campaign, playing against that automated opponent, felt like I was in a Star Wars movie. Like I was larger than life,
Yeah.
and I was just going to steamroll all of these, opposing ships. And the fact that there were a million of them and they just keep coming, also felt perfectly like it was a good fit. Any weaknesses in the automated opponent just ended up being like, no, this just feels cinematically like what it should be.
Yeah. And you could kind of try to game the system, but there was enough variety even amongst the D6 you roll
Yep.
where you weren't 100% sure where they were going to wind up. And I know we'll touch base on that with
Yeah,
Star
that's
Trek
a pretty
Alliance.
foundational thing to my philosophy for designing automated opponents. Yeah, that's pretty core to it as well.
It was an awesome product that was able to be put out right at the time where I was really starting to play more with the huge ships for X-Wing.
Hmm.
And there was a X-Wing group that was pretty big out here at the time. And we're getting into that because we wanted that campaign play because there's only so much head-to-head you can really do
Yeah, and
with
this
X-Wing.
is pre like X-Wing 2.5 now, the rule
Mhm.
set that Atomic Mass published has variant scenarios for head-to-head play, which add a lot.
Yes.
Back then it was just you bring some points and you smash them together on the table. Like
Nope.
there were no kind of competitive scenarios of any kind. It was very much just dogfighting.
So after Heroes, it just seems like that would be the transition you made then into Star Trek Alliance.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an interesting speed bump there for a couple of reasons. Because there's about a 5 year gap between Heroes being published and Alliance being published. If I remember correctly, it came out during the pandemic, the first box set for Alliance, or very
Yeah, I
shortly beforehand, somewhere in that range.
think it was right before because I remember seeing it and I picked it up
Mm,
because that was actually my introduction to Attack Wing was the Alliance product.
sure.
At which point there was so much Star Trek I had no idea where to jump in. So a very good entry point. With
Yeah.
I think there's a theme here also because folks are going to hear
Yep.
me say that about Aces as well. Um, but yeah, yeah, I know it was like right around the pandemic time, and then I went through it, and then there was a little delay for boxes 2 and 3, which came out real quick, one after another when they finally did.
Yeah. So I should probably I can tell you why that happened. The backstory and genesis of getting Alliance made was a bit of a roller coaster. So Heroes comes out 2015. It does quite well. Around the same time, I guess it's probably late 2015,
Hmm.
early 2016. A friend of mine from high school tells me that there's a board game cafe in our hometown, which is Guelph, Ontario, that's just opened up, and he's been starting to hang out with the folks who own it because like he's a board gamer. He likes tabletop games. He and I have been friends forever, and he finds out that they've been working on board games, and he looks at their stuff, and he phones me up and goes, "God, you got to meet these guys. They need your help."
Hmm.
And so I'm in Toronto at the time, so I hop on the commuter train and I go back to the hometown and I have dinner with these folks. And this is Tommy Gofton and a couple of the other folks who were part of what was then Linvander Studios, the very sort of first iteration of that company. And I don't think anyone was willing to admit to me how much they were impressed by the Heroes of the Aturi Cluster thing. It was just sort of swept under the rug, like no one really mentioned it. But there was this discussion of like, oh yeah, like you can do that. Yeah, like we probably can find some work for you. We could use your help. And so I started doing just like a very part time because I was already had a full time job at the time, but I started doing like very part time illustration and graphic design layout for Linvander. Fast forward a couple of years, um, three, two of the three founders have left basically, and we let go someone else, and then it was literally just down to Tommy and I, and we just kind of we still had all these opportunities that we were able to grab and pull down. Like we had worked on Buffy, we had started to work on at the time we were working on Terminator.
Hmm.
Behind you there. This would have been probably 2018, I think. That game came out in 20 late 18 or early 19, something like that.
Something like
But
that.
basically, yeah, we just kind of carried it on, and then a little while after that, we met Dylan Bertolo when we were working on Shadowrun Sprawl Ops with Catalyst Game Labs.
Oh, okay.
That's how far back that relationship goes.
Wow. Okay.
And we had even talked to them about doing, they had become aware of Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, and we had talked to them about like, well, why can't you do a co-op system for BattleTech? Even as early as, probably about 2018, I think. There's a funny behind the scenes there too, which we'll get to with Aces. But with Alliance, it took some convincing with WizKids to really greenlight that project. We met with, at the time he was director of board games for them, Zev, at Origins. There's Origins again. In 20, I think this actually was 2016. This was right at the beginning. We had a meeting with them to pitch them a couple of other games. One of which became Gemini Gauntlet eventually, which we published ourselves in 2020. That one's near and dear to my heart. That's like my game. The other one became Shadowrun Takedown under Catalyst eventually. Both of those games we pitched to WizKids, and they didn't end up doing anything with them. The only thing that actually came out of that meeting was Tommy asked them if they would be interested in a co-op version of Star Trek Attack Wing. And they were just kind of like stunned by this. They were like, that's not possible. Like, it's a head-to-head game. And Tommy's basically said to them, like, well, not only is it possible, like, it's been done already. Here's, let me show you Josh's work. And that was very much like well, Fantasy Flight doesn't want to, they don't want this? They don't want to do something with this? And evidently not. He's like, okay, well, we will. And so the jump from that meeting to getting Alliance greenlit to, they had production problems with like their tooling for all their spaceship molds were like at a different factory, or they were moving factories, or there was a whole foofara. They hadn't done a Star Trek Attack Wing product in a while that wasn't a sort of new format box set. And we wanted to go back and reprint some older stuff, so it had to like go through licensing all again. Like, this was also in the middle of the CBS Paramount like negotiation about who owned what for Star Trek. So like that whole process was under upheaval. So the whole like, chain from what should have been a pretty easy one shot, putt turned into this multi-year monstrosity just to kind of jump through all the hoops and get it made. And then nobody was really at WizKids. No one was really excited about it. Like they kind of, I think Zev saw the potential in it, but I don't think anyone else was really excited by it. Because in their mind, like Attack Wing was already kind of a dead game. Yeah. Like they saw their sales numbers for everything else they'd done with it, and they were just like, well, we'll offer you a royalty on it, but like, here's how many we're going to print. Like, this is a very small sum of money. Are you okay with this? And we said yes, because like, heck, I want my name on a Star Trek game.
Sure, who doesn't?
Yeah, at that point, like that's a childhood dream.
Yeah.
But it came out, and I think they were completely floored by the sales numbers that the first box set had done. And I think as soon as they got that first report back from their distribution, they were like, wait, we sold how many? Like out the hop? They immediately greenlit the second and third ones. And so those two were actually done. The development for them was kind of sketched out in the beginning, because we did originally pitch it as a trilogy that mirrored the storyline of that season of Deep Space Nine. But so there was some groundwork done, and just enough to make the trilogy pitch. But the actual development, scenario design, all that kind of happened as one big straight shot early pandemic. I remember playtesting it over webcam. I had set up a hunk of cardboard over my desk to make it big enough for the playmat. And I put a webcam on a swing arm over the desk. And so my playtesters were playing it virtually with like sort of guessing where things would end up. They couldn't really see the templates. They're like, yeah, it all worked. But just like kind of wild that it was so seat of the pants, I guess, the development on those other ones. But the second and third box also, I think, were quite well received. The third one's really hard to find now. I don't know if it's because they printed fewer of them or what. But I've been told people have a hard time finding the third one if they want the capstone to the trilogy.
I have all three, so I'm pretty happy.
You're set.
I'm set for a while, and again, another one of those things where I own two of each. So
yep.
But it's handy to have more of the ships, right? So
it is. Yeah, and you can. Well, those ones. The other actual challenge with that was Heroes was always made with. I own like an insane amount of everything for X-wing.
Right.
I probably have 25 TIE fighters now and 4 of most models. That co-op campaign and the way the scenarios were built were like literally just assuming you had the same collection as me.
Mhm.
With Star Trek Alliance, suddenly I had to figure out how to do all the same gameplay stuff with no miniatures budget. like like twisting someone's arm to make that display window on the box wide enough to put 5 models in there and the cost of goods on it, like that was a negotiation. And the factory actually had to come back and tell us to widen the box.
That's funny.
Like it was they couldn't get all 5 models in the vac tray tight enough, and you can see it behind you
Yeah,
over your shoulder. Like the 2 Jem'Hadar ships are right to the edge of the vac tray.
they really are. I mean,
Yeah, that's why it was supposed to have 4 models originally.
well, when you look at a lot of the other box sets, I think a lot of them are just 4 models, very
They are.
nicely spaced in there.
Yep.
And I'm guessing that's just why they went with this bigger size
Hmm.
box versus some of the
Yeah, but
older
it's like
boxes.
it's like an inch wider. The whole box is an inch wider too, just
It
to fit
really is.
everything.
It really is. But I mean, a great series of products that I remember when I first saw it come out, there was some previews that came out. I'm like, this looks just like Heroes of the Aturi Cluster. Then you do some digging. I'm like, same guy designed it. That's cool. Like that. I should like this.
Yeah.
Um, so, again, very well received. I enjoy it. We've got the first box set out on the channel. Actually, we're talking of redoing the first box set with
Oh,
John and
nice.
I both at the table instead of trying to do it over the pandemic where we weren't
Hmm.
really the same issue. Trying to do anything over webcams and whatnot
Yep.
is not always the best option. Um, but that said, so Star Trek Alliance comes out. You get your 3 boxes, and then what was the
Hmm.
next thing that wound up being in your grouping of games?
Uh, let's see. I would say the next stop is actually Snapships
Okay.
because that toy line released, I think it was 2020. Like it was in any other year, kids would have been running around the playground with Snapships in hand. But I think it just didn't quite happen the way that any of them at Play Monster or at Snapships had planned. And so it was in Target.
Hmm.
Well, they had a pretty decent like mass market distribution deal out of the gate. Um, and a friend of mine in the States had picked them up for his kid and sent me a picture, just like, hey, you like Lego. And at the time I was part of a Lego user group, and I was building and displaying Lego models. Most of it sci-fi stuff, most of it spaceships.
Sure.
Everything from fighters to 3 foot long monstrosities. And so
Mhm.
he saw these spaceship toys and also knew that I was into X-wing and was like, well, this is sort of those two things together, kind of. It's a toy, like you should check this out. And so I bought 3 of the smallest kits and paid duty to get them into Canada and built a couple of things with them and very quickly realized like, yeah, I really should buy 2 of everything. And so I did and paid an exorbitant amount of duty. It comes in a box the size of a bar fridge. Um, I crack it all open. I start building all kinds of crazy stuff, enormous, taking the same ethos that built a 3 foot Lego spaceship and doing it in Snapships.
Hmm.
Um, and I noticed on their various social platforms or like some of the flyers or whatever in the box, they've got an Instagram um, page for the toy line. And so I go, oh, I'm already posting Lego models on Flickr. Like if they're big on Instagram as a thing to do, like I should post some on Instagram and tag them.
Yeah.
Thinking like, whatever. This is just a fun, cool thing to build with. Well, it turns out the Instagram page is actually not run by the toy production company. It's run by the 2 inventors who licensed them the concept, Mr. Scott Pease and Jeff Swenty. And they were immediately like, whoa, someone is already building like all this crazy stuff with Snapships. Like how does anyone this familiar with this building system? It's been out for all of 4 months. Like what's going on? And so they did an interview with me, like a show and tell basically, where
Hmm.
I had a pile of different customs off camera and I just kept sort of wheeling them across frame and showing them. Um, and we like went over time. Like it was a whole thing. They wanted 20 minutes of content. They got like an hour out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after we were done shooting all of this and talking about all these builds, I asked them like, hey, how come this isn't a tabletop game? And Scott laughed at me because apparently that's where they started.
No
And the toy
kidding.
had been in development for almost 5 years at that point, like from their first concept of the way the blocks fit together to getting the manufacturing sorted out and the distribution sorted out. So like at some point they just realized like, okay, figuring out toy and figuring out game is just like that's way too big a problem to tease apart. So they just put the game idea on the shelf and went whole hog with the toy. And when I asked them that question, I think it kind of it broke the logjam. Like, oh yeah, okay, well the toy's figured out now. We could figure out the game.
Mhm.
Yeah, Josh, you work for Linvander Studios, so you've worked on a whole bunch of different licensed properties and a whole bunch of ones that are bigger and better known than we are. So I guess you know how to handle a licensed property. And well, clearly you know how to build the ships already. Oh, and you made this full-on co-op mod for X-Wing. So, and how much X-Wing you've played? Like, if you can imagine the Venn diagram. Oh, and the graphic designer bit, right?
Yeah.
You can imagine the Venn diagram of these four circles, and I'm just standing in the middle of it. And so it was a very short jump from there to, well, you're hired, let's go. Let's do this thing. And that took us through a good chunk of the pandemic. We were running betas of that rule set at Origins and Gen Con and PAX Unplugged for a couple of years during the pandemic.
Mhm.
We had people come through and blind test it. Well, not quite blind play test it, but almost blind play test it with a little bit of hand holding. At all these shows and fill out surveys. So like just the outreach on bootstrapping this toy line into a game, it was pretty amazing. And I was really adamant from the beginning that like, yes, I'd like to do a miniatures game. I think it should be a head-to-head battle game. They very much wanted an X-Wing style thing. But my stipulation was, well, it should have solo and co-op play from the beginning.
Mhm.
Because I've done that a couple of times now. I think this is the perfect model for it. It's a little bit different because the rule set is different, so it needs a kind of different paradigm to approaching the AI opponent. But I think we can do it, and we did. And it wasn't long after it came out that someone said, like, well, hey, you made Heroes of the Aturi Cluster and Star Trek Alliance. At what point are we going to get Heroes of the Aturi Cluster but for snapships? And I laughed at them because I said, like, well, yeah, we can do that, but I have to make X-Wing first. Like I was building atop of these existing systems for these other games. Like this time I have to invent the system first and then build the hat that
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can wear. And so we're still not quite there in terms of a co-op campaign experience for snapships.
No, but you
But
do
it
have
is one
those
of the things
AI
that,
cards out for all the different ships, which
yeah,
again just puts you right
yeah,
back into the theme
yeah,
here, Josh. I mean, I'm loving it.
yeah. Every pre-made build that comes with instructions in a
Hmm.
snapships kit or box set has a deck of AI cards to play it. So you can, and the part of the genius of that in snapships, I feel like, is if you build some random ship, because unlike X-Wing or Star Trek where you're kind of getting everything pre-cooked, like you've got a ship chassis, you're going to bolt a couple of power-ups on it, then it's good to go.
Right.
Snapships is so much more modular than that. Like you've got a chassis that doesn't do a lot, and then you're gonna bolt a whole bunch of different parts on them in their WYSIWYG. So what the ship has on it is how it plays. It has matching cards. There's a much wider range of like stuff you can do, and not all of the things you can build are necessarily tactically viable. And so one of the things that was great about having the AI decks in the box from the beginning is, did you build a Frankenstein's monster of a ship? Okay, well, before you subject this to humiliation at the hands of your opponent, why don't you try and play against the automated opponent and see if you can do okay there? See if there's any shakedown cruise that has to be done on this flight test for this model. So
I
that's gone very well. We did a pretty successful Kickstarter campaign for that in 2023.
Mhm.
Yeah, 23. Fulfilled it in 24 summer. We are about to actually go back to Kickstarter with a whole new wave of expansions for it. That's very exciting. We're going big this time. We're doing bigger models. and a variety of extra stuff. I think we're doubling the size of the game, like total card pool doubling. So very
Is this
excited to
where
see
the
that.
capital ships start getting involved?
Snapital ship, yeah.
Capital ships?
That's the unofficial name. I tease people with that one all the time. I think they will become known as that. But yeah, they're multi-stand, so they're very much like X-Wing capital ships. But because of the modularity of the rule set, we didn't really have to reinvent some of the core mechanics. We were just able to be like, well, they're just glued together. They move as a unit. They rotate around whichever half you want. Like a lot of the mechanics came for free, which is really cool.
That's kind of a neat way to be able to expand the game and allow you to scale up with it.
Mhm.
I know for me, because I just picked this one up about a week ago,
Oh yeah.
and started playing with putting them together and everything. There's the
So
little
you were able to find a starter set.
I found one sitting right. It
Okay.
was at a Barnes and Noble of all
Yep.
places.
I was going to say, I think there's a few left at Barnes and Noble. We're otherwise sold out of the entire first print run.
I mean,
Again, why we have to go back to Kickstarter.
so I got lucky,
Yeah,
clearly,
apparently.
because I was looking on like Amazon and a couple other stores locally. No one has it. And, just
Hmm.
walked into a Barnes and Noble. I was actually picking up some books, and just you have to go look at the game section whenever you walk into a
Yep,
Barnes and
it's a
Noble.
requirement.
And
We
I
do it on
saw it.
road trips.
Yeah, take must take, and then
Hmm.
that wound up just coming out here. So, haven't had a chance to really truly play with it yet, but I've heard enough good things and seen enough good demos. And the designer's not bad either. So
it
I figure I can trust the game to be not too bad. So,
should be. It
I'm
should
really
be
looking
a
forward to getting
playable
this
game.
out. Say again?
It should be a playable game.
Should be a playable game. Completely agree. So you guys are doing a new Kickstarter. You're getting on a new run for Snapship Tactics. You have your
Yep.
Snapital ships, more expansions for your fighters and everything else.
Yeah.
Was there some new design work and development that went into the next grouping or next sprint run, or not really?
Yeah, there's a little bit of stuff that had to change in the core rules. We discovered a few things that didn't quite miss the or hit the mark. Um, didn't hit the bullseye necessarily on the first wave. A couple of small quality of life things. So there will be like a 1.1 edition rulebook, but the changes are very minor. We changed collisions very slightly. They're now a little bit less brutal if you're a smaller ship getting run over. Um, it's a problem when you have a multi-stand monstrosity that just wants to be a battering ram. It turned out that kind of broke the game in some hilarious ways. And then we also discovered that because of the stuff we wanted to do with the part design in the game and the sort of levers we wanted to be able to turn, we changed the construction rules so you can't have more than 2 copies of the same thing on a ship. Like every part is double limited per ship, not per list. So you can still build 4 of the same thing and field it if you want with loaded up with this whatever it is. But we found there were some really hilarious edge case combos that you could play that weren't necessarily the best models or lists you could field, but they were kind of degenerate to play against. And so we discovered or just decided that most people aren't going to own more than 2 copies of anything anyway.
Right.
So let's just take out the very extreme ends of that bell curve and sort of kill off the pay to win issue of I bought 5 copies of the ship so I could have a ship with 5 copies of its gun and shoot them all sequentially. Just like, no, that's no one should let you leave the hangar bay with a ship that looks like that. If you want
No.
to do that at home, be my guest. But the official rule for that is now having a little bit of a ceiling on it.
So this is one Snapship Tactics. You've kind of been involved, definitely on the game portion of it for
Yep.
pretty much the entire time.
Yep. And all
with
of the graphic design.
okay, that was going to be where I was going with this. Yeah.
We hire out illustration for the part illustrations and the ship illustrations,
Mhm.
and obviously like the box cover and stuff. But all of the iconography, all of the user interface of how you understand what the cards are and how they're laid out. That's all me as well. There's an interesting thing. You get some advantages in speed of implementation and clarity of implementation when the designer is also the person laying it out to explain the game to someone. Obviously, from doing all the conventioning and stuff over the years, I have a lot of experience teaching games that I've worked on to people.
Sure.
And so being also the person that then writes the rule book to teach people. Because there are a lot of designers out there who can't write their own rule book because they're too close to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been fortunate enough to maintain a little bit of a distance and to have the kind of graphic design user experience background, because it came from software,
Sure.
to kind of do a lot of that myself. So there are some definite advantages and some time savings you realize that way. At the same time, it's hard to be the person in all of the chairs at once. It's like trying to crew the bridge of a starship. You got to hop from console to console, push all the buttons. Like it feels a little bit like that sometimes. I was thankfully with BattleTech when we finally kind of worked out how it was going to go with Catalyst. That was the first time that I'm not going to say put in charge, because that implies I had any actual authority over them, but more like put in a coordinating position between a bunch of different elements of the company, both inside and outside their staff, to work on that project, because it's bigger than all the others by far in terms of its amount of content, complexity of its automated opponent. There's a whole narrative element. Like that box set behind you on the shelf has about 100,000 words of fiction. Like it is almost a novel, and had to be structured and planned the same way as a novel. That is also a tabletop miniatures wargame. That is also an opponent, an automated opponent, and that is also a campaign system. So like it, in a lot of ways, it felt as daunting to me as Heroes of the Aturi Cluster did when I started that project. Like it was as big a morsel to kind of figure out how the heck I'm gonna, accomplish this. But again, we had a lot of really solid help from the folks at Catalyst. Two of their writers, Joshua Franklin, who is the line developer for Alpha Strike specifically, which is the system that Aces is built on, was basically assigned to be my liaison. I think he was the person with the most bandwidth, but it also kind of worked out well because he knew the rule set I was working on like very well, because he wrote it, or wrote a good chunk of it. And then the other person who became my liaison was Keith Hahn, who is their rules expert who wrote the Battle Mech manual, which is like their go-to introductory rulebook for the classic BattleTech game.
Right.
So he knows his stuff. He knows about rules and systems. And so the two of them together were able to help me really look under the hood of how their game engine worked. Like this would be like as if at the time, I mean, it doesn't work there anymore, but in the era that I, was doing X-Wing stuff, this would be like if Alex Davey, who was the lead developer there, was like, I was given his phone number and got to ask him all the questions about how to implement the thing. Like, it was kind of amazing to get that. That was such a wild project because Tommy, I think, did like so much legwork with Catalyst and to build that relationship, and at Linvander, to sort of pull the two companies together. And obviously we had worked on Sprawl Ops together. We had done Shadowrun Takedown beforehand. And then getting them to kind of greenlight BattleTech, we knew it was going to be a multi-year situation. We were pitching a single box set, and we said, well, you could build it out into a trilogy like we did with Alliance. And in that pitch meeting, Randall actually said, Randall Bills, who is their, I guess, right-hand man, Mr. BattleTech is the unofficial title I'll give him, because he's been attached to the property at the hip for about 30 years.
It's been a long time.
He was there at the tail end of the FASA days, and every time it's sold to different owners, he jokes that he's there at the first desk on the day they come into the new office. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing with this BattleTech thing? I'm ready. But anyway, so he was the person that we were talking to at Catalyst about this, and after pitching him, it could be a single box set, and here's sort of how we would do it. He was like, well, a trilogy, like that also sounds like a good idea, but really the era we want to set it to coincide with the rest of our product line is this Ilclan era, which is the bleeding edge of our timeline. And we've been publishing source books in this particular 2-year in-universe window now for 5 years of in-year time, so that we can catch up all the different settings in the inner sphere of BattleTech, all the different planets and houses and clans and everything, so we can get them all caught up. So we've got these 4 source books that are part of this era. What we should really do is a box tied into each of them so we can cross-sell and get people into, like, they like this era, they can play this one.
Right.
That was the first pitch meeting I think I'd ever been into where I came out with a much bigger workload than I was pitching to start the project with. But Randall, to his credit, bless him, is extremely ambitious.
Hmm.
You know, no one can say, I don't think anyone can fault him for his level of ambition on any project he's ever been involved in. And this one was no different. But we were very aware going in that like the narrative portion was one thing, because they have over 100 published novels now, and their process for how their internal fact check team works to make sure that this is going to be a canon story, it's going to be approved by the line developer, it's going to fit into this framework we've got and all these other novels that are happening at places like right next door around it on this map. We better make sure it dovetails with that. So, okay, Josh, you're going to have to learn all the lore. And so like BattleTech novel after BattleTech novel just slammed into my brain. I make the joke that I was like Neo in the Matrix. They plugged the cable into the back of my head, and all of a sudden I knew BattleTech. Um, but that was a pretty significant hurdle to learn enough of the setting, because I came into BattleTech with nothing. Like I knew about Terminator. I've been a Star Trek fan. I've been a Star Wars fan my whole life. Snapships is its own very tight little universe, and there wasn't a ton to digest. But I was given 40 years of lore for BattleTech that was like, yeah, make sense of that. Figure out where we can set this box and give me some details.
There's a lot, there's a whole history, and then depending on the
1,000
era
years
that
of
you're
peak
looking
world
at.
time, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's so much to get into BattleTech. Sometimes that can be very intimidating to someone because, I just want to play stompy robots that shoot things. Okay, but
Yes,
now you have the whole which stompy robots do you want? You can't build it that way because of this. But one of the nice things about BattleTech is you put whatever you want on the table, throw some X down, have a good time.
you
Um,
absolutely can. That is a valid
and
way to play the game.
it's how I prefer. I mean, I have a preference to that 3025 to 3050 era, the just
Sure.
before the clan invasion, but that's because I've been playing BattleTech since 1980. Um, and so,
Very good, sir.
so you had to learn all this lore. You've got some great people helping you try to figure out what planets you can do this on.
Hmm.
Um, which yes, okay, Apalakia is something that you can look up and learn how to pronounce, but man, probably about the first 12 times, and I'm sure in the first 5 videos that we've put out for Aces, we mispronounced it at least twice.
Yeah,
So
it's an island in Greece.
yes, yes, it is. Um,
The actual all of the various planets in the inner sphere were mostly named by people who lived in the Wisconsin area, because that's where the company was. That's where FASA was, and they were pretty hard pressed to put enough planets on that map. And I think they just started pulling street names off their local road atlas. Like Randall will be the first person to tell you that. Um, that was a little bit before his time, even. That inner sphere map predates his involvement with BattleTech, which means it's pretty close to the beginning of the timeline. Um, but yeah, like the amount of wrangling I found out behind the scenes to make sure nobody had a dropship land on my planet in the middle of my timeline, like
mhm.
that kind of stuff. They are that fanatical about the timeline and protecting their canon. And it was important to them that this would be a canon story. And I
Okay.
think that they were so invested in that story. Not only did I have multiple rounds with their fact check team on Aces, I did a pass. We wrote a setting document, which would, like, if you were going to write a novel, you probably setting brief out everything and figure out what the planet is, who the major players are, roughly the skeleton of the story. Like, we submitted that. That went through a pretty rigorous fact check with their team, who did a fantastic job. Um, it then went through all of the nuts and bolts scenario design and writing all the little waypoint bits, either me skeletoning them in, or me taking a shot at them and then them being rewritten by Russell Zimmerman,
Okay.
who is a fantastic author, does a lot of licensed property work, has been published many times now in their fiction magazine Shrapnel. I believe he has a novel. There's a full BattleTech novel coming pretty soon. But he did a fantastic job. All the actual fiction in Aces, um, in Scouring Sands, and then also the other boxes going forward. Like he's got the job. He did such a fantastic job. He's got job security for the next couple of boxes. Um, but it was interesting. That was the first time that I was like, well, I kind of know what the story I want to tell about this is. having someone who will then just go and polish it to a shine, right? And widen the lens, like all the little sidebars that come in at the front half of the Aces scenarios that kind of tell you the story from the perspective of someone who's not in your mercenary force or behind the controls of a battle mech on your team. Like, oh, we were going to go raid this depot. Yeah, you get a little bit of a snippet about some elementals complaining that they have to stand guard. Like, it's a fantastic, just like widening the lens a little into the universe, right? And I feel like that's a real high watermark for my experience on working with these games. Like, I just cannot believe how much of a difference having that relationship and getting to include that kind of level of polish into what was going to be a little campaign box set with an automated opponent, right? Like it elevated it to the status of like almost a novel, I feel like.
One of the things that we enjoyed with our playthrough of it, and actually the one you bring up where you've got a bunch of elementals sitting there complaining that it's the middle of the night and no one's going to come raid their I think it was a power station, or no, it was a
Yep.
data depot, but
Hmm.
uh,
That's the
we
one that's
found
set
that
at night, yeah, with the
right.
searchlight.
We absolutely found that hysterical. We loved the flavor text, if you will, but it
Hmm.
really kind of got us into the story. And you know, from all right, I'll be a little self-serving here, but from a content creator perspective, it was
Yeah.
neat because we had a whole story to tell. And one of the things
Hmm.
we really enjoyed about playing through Aces is it became our story, but it was also we were
Sure.
enjoying being in the universe, and we really did feel that we were up against a group of kind of well-trodden, not great Jade Falcon
Hmm.
warriors who couldn't make the trip out to Terra because they're like, nah,
Yeah.
we're just going to leave you behind. You're old. You're not great, you know. Um, and I'm sure that, you know, in digging through the lore and understanding, that's kind of what helped you, I'm assuming, help form up the different cards for the different types of mechs and everything else, along with the commander
Yeah.
capabilities.
It did. Two things were really apparent early on. I mentioned there were sort of two big hurdles. Narrative was one of them. The other really big hurdle was, and Randall is pretty clever to have identified this early on. Um, all of the other automated opponents I had written for games, even going back to the one in Terminator, like Terminator being a board game on a hex grid, sure, but
Hmm.
it's a pretty rudimentary automated opponent. It is the level that you would expect from like a Zombicide sort of style game. Like
Yeah,
it's very basic, gets the job done, and as a Terminator robot, it does exactly what it needs to do, no more.
right.
Um, with Star Trek and X-wing and even Snapships, all of those games have a ruler tool and some kind of docket to the base. Model moves in a very prescriptive way,
Right.
and so those automated opponents work because the you can bake in and sort of hide all of the geometry understanding of the game
Hmm.
in a very sort of simple lookup table. Like essentially that's what that card is in Heroes and in Star Trek. It's just a way of distilling the geometry of the game down to a way that a player can look at it and be like one step removed from what the actual move should be.
Hmm.
And then by putting them on a roll and lookup for Star Trek and for X-Wing, or in the case of Snapships, there's a different card. There's a little deck of them, and you get a different card every time. You'll see that in Aces, that idea. But like having to have all that very regimented movement meant you could have a very prescriptive AI that was very like, do this step, do this step, do this step, and there's 4 steps and it's done.
Hmm.
Okay, but like BattleTech Alpha Strike is a game you play with a tape measure.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere. Like I can't just design a automated opponent that's like do this maneuver template. It's well, the model can go anywhere in this big circle. Um, I don't know which way should it go. Also, there's a lot of terrain that blocks line of sight.
Yeah.
X-wing doesn't have that. Star
Hmm.
Trek doesn't have that. Snapships doesn't have that yet. It will. And
Ah.
actually, that's a fun development challenge that's happening in the co-op space for Snapships coming up. Is
Hmm.
how do we do more interesting stuff with scenery, and how does it cause issues with the AI and so on. Um, but in Aces, this whole lack of like a regimented movement meant that I had to come up with a completely different paradigm for how to write and teach and explain that AI card. And for both of the other ones, in Snapships and in Star Trek, I had started off with the premise that, well, there's no point in playing a cooperative game if it takes more effort to operate the automated opponent than it does for you to take your own turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're not playing the game is playing you. As far as I'm concerned. Like, that's not where I want to
see
spend
your
my
point.
time.
Yeah.
I want to be strategizing about what my cool move is, and I want the game to just go boop and just react to it, right? Video game style.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take as long as I want. Video game, I'll play like XCOM or Final Fantasy Tactics or something, and all the other models on the table just away they go. I don't care how they arrived at that decision. I only care about how it's going to affect me, right? And so that's where the fun is. I don't bog me down with upkeep. And so with both those other systems, I started off with the card design, like literally the layout. How much information can I reasonably put on the card at a font size you can read? I hope I can get an opponent that plays okay with that much information. And then you start running out of space, and you're like, oh crap! I guess with that common word, we should replace that with an icon. This is how BattleTech Aces has so many icons.
I was actually, that was one of my questions that I was thinking up in my head is, how much of that iconography came out just to simplify the ability to run through the filters. Although that
and to
said,
put it on a standard size card.
and the thing is, it's actually fairly intuitive once you kind of get into it. We noticed that after the first couple run throughs, we started getting really quick at where everything's going to go. Downside again, content creation. What are we doing? We're going through it very precisely and putting it in the best possible spot, because otherwise, we're going to get 12 comments. It should have moved over here.
Yeah. Well, and I got that even with the there is a full 6-page guided tutorial in the campaign book for Aces that's got, okay, turn 1, you've got these 4 mechs, you're going to move them like this, okay, and then the opponent mech draws this card, and this is how you interpret it, and it goes here, times 3 rounds of that for movement phase, combat phase, and 2 enemy mechs. There were some errors in the Scouring Sands book that somebody flagged, and I was like, oh no. Because the way that was written, I had my computer up, my workspace. The space behind me here is a 4x4 table. I put the computer up to standing height, and I was playing a move, and then I would walk over to the computer and document it, and I would play a move and document it, and I would go back and forth. And while I was doing that, I was also building the diagram. I would write down the move in the text window, but I would also, in the InDesign file I had for the map, drag the mech icon to where it needed to be, and I would double check the measurements on the table. Somebody discovered I had a line of sight error. And I'm pretty confident it's because they set up the table, or the diagram was set up like a half mech to the left where one of the buildings was, and it changed the line of sight calculation, which then domino ripple effects through all of the Aces line of sight calculations. Like, that's not a valid spot to stand. Like, it's the butterfly wings problem. The entire kingdom of cards collapses as a result. And so one of the things that is in Snowblind is we reused that tutorial, but I fixed the error. And you can imagine how tedious that was to change. I ended up having to kind of trace the entire thread of the game and discover I had to move a building half an inch to fix it.
It's funny. That is funny. But I mean, this is also something
speaks to the complexity of the opponent, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have people that are going to nitpick and find little things and be like, well, why does it work this way versus this? And, I mean, I get it. It's kind of funny. The one downside is unlike a software patch, you can't just go ahead and have everyone download the new version.
It's a little tough, yeah.
But that said, it's still pretty solid in terms of the tutorial, really gets you into the game and everything else.
That was my biggest fear, actually, of the entire project, is like, we could make the best automated opponent I could think of that would do a good job of playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But if people don't understand how it works well enough to run it in a way that then actually executes that code, then it's not going to be a great experience. The challenge is really, like, and I think about this a lot for game design broadly, is with tabletop game design, you are writing code that runs on the worst processor there is, which is the human brain. Like the least, it's got the lowest RAM, the lowest clock speed. Like it's got to be as simple as possible. And if it doesn't work, if a mistake is made, you also have to factor in, does it still work well enough that they will hand wave it away or still have a good time? And a lot of the challenge of Aces was both of those things too. If someone screws up this rule and doesn't do this move as we intended, will they still have a good experience? And actually, we discovered in some of our early playtesting, I had someone who played almost the entire campaign through before I realized they were playing the automated opponent not as written. And their reviews of all of the scenarios and all the experience they had with the game, they were like, "This is fantastic. I love this." And then I kind of asked them some follow-up questions on this one little thing they did, and then found out that they like weren't applying the movement filters for priorities in any sensible way that matched the rulebook. And I was like, well, on one hand, all your testing data is invalid, which probably means all your um, all of your repair bills and PV calculations for all your scenarios are probably wrong or different than as intended. But the fact that you're telling me that it still worked and you had a good time is like incredibly vindicating for me. Like I feel really good about being a game designer in that moment because I know it still worked and you still had a good time, even if you didn't play
Yeah.
the game exactly as I intended.
Yeah, but you're going to get a little bit of that, especially with the freedom of movement you have within
Yes.
Alpha Strike. It's just, I mean, trying to figure out, all right, we have your mech can move 18 inches, and
Mm-hmm.
where is
Fast.
it going to fall in the map? Well, we kind of want it to have like no light. Well, here, let me just pull a card, right?
There you go.
So, Juggernaut 571 for those following along, and I will go ahead and oddly enough, I have all of it just sitting here because I was
Sure.
looking through it.
What a surprise.
I'm sure you've got it right behind you as well. But
Actually,
like
that's play testable content from the future set. Where's my production one? Oh, it's in the bag that goes to the store. I always carry the production Aces decks with me in case people want to play co-op.
and honestly, that's one of the things we really have enjoyed about Aces was the fact that we can play it co-op.
Mm-hmm.
John and I do a lot of head to head. I mean, we just went through a classic series where, and we look back and realized, oh wait, we did a couple things wrong. Those have also been pointed out to us.
That's also core to the experience of playing BattleTech.
I don't think it is possible to play a game of BattleTech precisely without getting something messed up.
Certainly
And
not classic.
definitely not classic. And this is coming from someone that still plays Starfleet battles and realizes, oh, I did that wrong and have been for the last 40 years. Um, but like looking at the movement filters here, it's all right. You're targeting your nearest opponent. Your ground movement, jump if needed. I mean that right
Mm-hmm.
there. It's like here's where you still have this giant hole of where you can move the mech. And it's cover
Yep.
from target. Where in there can we potentially find target? And it wants to get closer, and then you want to have line of sight, and then you want to have cover
Yep.
against the most number of enemies. And it gets to the point to where at first you're looking at it, at least this was our experience. Wow, that's a lot. And you're trying to find the exact precise place. And then you start backing up and trying it again. And you're like, all right, its limited movement is like this small section. So where in there do we want it? Well, we want to
Mm-hmm.
get closer, so it eliminates half of it. And well, we want it to be in cover. Well, all right, this is a spot that looks good, and just angle it
Yeah.
correctly, and we're done. Um, it
90% of the time, that will be good enough.
and that
That's
was kind
that's
of
the intended experience, I would say.
that's where we're kind of getting it to. It's like we're pretty good in terms of where we think it's going to be. And every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, we would get a movement order that would be just completely foreign to our methodology of thinking. And we go, well, why would he do that? That makes
Yep.
no sense whatsoever. We'd make our movements, and then we get into the combat phase, and all of a sudden, that's the one that's delivering the killing blow to whatever we moved forward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a couple things that we've learned through it. They're like, maybe we should try doing this every once in a while because it really worked out better for the
Yep.
AI opponent as opposed to us.
Yeah, and it's also a tool to teach you the game, right? Like that's the other thing. You will learn more about the nuances of how Alpha Strike specifically, but BattleTech broadly, the game works by
Mhm.
playing against this automated opponent. Because some of the things it does are not the way a human would play the game. They
No.
simply can't be. It's not as nuanced. It is not as complicated or as deep in its search for doing things.
Mhm.
It is absolutely back to that thing of like, well, what is the fewest instructions I can give you to figure out where a cool move would be that will make the game interesting to play against? Not can we play against a supercomputer that's going to crush us, but more like what is the experience if I'm playing against this character from the BattleTech universe?
Mhm.
And that's the other thing I think actually maybe I'm even more proud of than the narrative stuff is the idea that like the commander deck is a relatively late addition to the development of that game. It came in probably 3/4 of the way through the game, like designing all the decks, testing everything. And it came about for two reasons. The first was we realized that there were certain things you needed the opponent to be able to keep track of across multiple turns.
Mhm.
All of the other opponents, Heroes, Star Trek, even Terminator, even they have no their time horizon ends at the end of the current move. They have no forethought into what's happening next round and how I need to set up for it. Whereas in Aces, you actually have two separate time horizons. You have where do I need to be right now for the, or sorry, three. Where do I need to be right now for the movement phase? What am I going to shoot at the combat phase? And check a whole separate set of things there. And then next turn, have I done a bad thing and gotten too far out of position, or have I failed to like make steady progress towards where I got to go?
Yeah.
And so the commander as a separate card meant that for the first time in any of these automated opponents, I had a way of keeping track of a global priority that was going to continue on turn over turn to keep them on target, working together, even within a single combat phase. Uploading some of their criteria to this main deck meant that they would all then resolve the same way, which means they would make some of the same choices, which means they would end up working together in a way that like a human player might have a Lance of Formex concentrate fire. That was never that level of nuance never happened in the other games because either you didn't have enough models on the game, like BattleTech has more models on the table at any given time usually, or it ended up being that because of the way the dice modifiers and calculations work in those games, there's either no range mod, like in Snapships, or it's so minimal in Star Trek that you usually just want to shoot the thing closest to you anyway. In BattleTech, it's worth shooting the really slow thing that's far away because you got to get started on it now. Or sometimes it's worth ignoring the really fast thing unless it's right up in your grill because you
Right.
just can't hit it and actually hurt it. And so, like, all of those nuances kind of got smoothed out a bit by the commander deck and the things it did to sort of marshal the various individual aces decks into playing better as a team. Because before that, they very much felt like clanners. They were 100% selfish. They were only out for their own business. And the result was like you felt like you were playing five separate opponents in a star as opposed to a star of five guys working together. So that made a huge difference. The other aha moment in Ace's AI development was we were having problems early on with the search criteria mechs were using to identify targets.
Mhm.
So like you can put all the filters on the command card you want, but like sometimes those filters will point to the thing that's 40 inches on the table away from you, way over there on hiding in a tree line on this hill. Like you're never gonna hurt that thing. It might as well not exist for the purposes of what you should be doing right now.
Right.
But you would consistently get cards resolving like, well, the thing I actually want to hunt is on that hill over there. I'm going to ignore this skirmish happening at my feet
Yeah.
and charge over there in a straight line. And if you play the beta decks from the Mercenaries Kickstarter, you'll see that that is absolutely how some of those resolve.
Yeah.
And so the solution was what became the zones, the
Mhm.
middle box in each column on the Aces cards to kind of rein in target priority by proximity. So they would still sort of go after nearest, but it was nearest with like a sort of vague bubble
Mhm.
of anywhere between 6 and maybe 20 inches away from you. And the result meant that sometimes it would focus on near things, or sometimes it would focus further out, or occasionally it would pick the thing on the far side of the table, but only if it was a unit that like could reasonably be assumed to have that much movement to go over there, like a fire moth or something.
So ACES, the whole campaign system, we've talked about the narrative component of it, where we've got the flavor text, the in-universe kind of dig into it,
Hmm.
and then what happens during it and everything else. But what we haven't really touched on yet is the entire branching storyline. Um,
Yeah, we got really into the automated opponent there.
which I'm fine with, because actually, in a way, when you start looking at the different filters and whatnot, that's where we were, filters. Um,
Mhm.
see, this is going to go great. Um, when you're looking down at the campaign, you've got this branch of, I think you start with three different options. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
three options, and then that
Right out
fourth
the
one.
dropship. Where do you go?
All right, dropship. Where do you go? You can get a couple different paths depending on the option that you pick, and then you all get to
Hmm.
that. I'm going to call it cinematic battle, right in the middle, where
Yes.
you first deal with Conrad Sender, and then you've got, I
Hmm.
think it's four different paths to go down there. Now, how did that
This,
kind of
yeah.
come about, and how did you wind up figuring the right paths? Because you've got keywords and other things that get involved in there.
Yeah, that was this is the part where I'm gonna step out of the spotlight and point it firmly at Dylan Bertolo, my co-designer. Um, he's not a BattleTech guy. He's done some work for Shadowrun. I think at one point he did write a BattleTech story, but it was a very long time ago. It doesn't really know the universe very well. Um, Still likes the big stompy mechs, of course, but we ended up with a very. I've never worked in this sort of workflow before on a project, and again, having more resources for doing the kind of narrative adventure that I've done, um, I really wanted to involve Dylan as early on in the story process as possible. A, because he's a published author and is good with words and understands how narrative works structurally, how what all the various beats and flow should be for telling a story. But specifically, he's got several published choose your own adventure books that he worked on.
Oh, fun! I didn't know
And
that.
so I could not have had a better resource for doing this. And I basically said, like, look, every other campaign I've ever worked on, it's got this template, but all the scenarios are basically linear, or in the case of heroes, sort of linear, but you shuffle a deck and you deal out.
Right.
Um, the thing that I wanted to make sure, like, if we're going to put all this effort into getting this story done right for this game, I really want like this choose your own adventure branching thing to be satisfying. And actually, he and I had worked really closely together on the Divinity Original Sin board game, which we were originally working on with Larian. Lynn Vander did not end up finishing that project. We had some creative differences with the folks at Larian, um, and then ended up hiring someone else to finish the game. But I would say probably 80% of what we worked on ended up in the finished product. And most of what was kept was actually the branching narrative and like the various locations we
Okay.
had built for the adventure. So he did a good job, and it continues to have been a good job, apparently. In the case of Scouring Sands, when I wrote that setting document to get fact check to approve, that became the cornerstone for Dylan to start thinking about what sort of story would be satisfying to tell. Like, we kind of understand where we need to start. You're hired by these folks. You're going to come to the planet. You're going to do this thing. You're going to fight these guys in some way. And then at the end of it, well, ultimately, no matter what happens, they have to get defeated. But that could look like a bunch of different things. And as long as they get defeated, your paymasters will be happy and you can wrap up the contract,
Yeah.
essentially, right? And so I basically said, like, here, I think I think it needs to be about 7 scenarios long, because we all agree, and Catalyst all agrees that, like, that's a good length of a campaign to play that will have enough satisfying progression. There'll be enough story choices, but it's not so long that you're going to be playing it forever and ever and ever. Neither of us like the very long, many scenario campaign games. I think he has now played Gloomhaven. I bounced off Gloomhaven very hard for partly that reason. Um, but getting to the point where we could then turn that into the actual finished book, we collectively brainstormed about 80 or now maybe 100 actually scenarios that you could use this system to tell, with like the waypoints and like, oh, well, we got all these random tokens. What can we do with them? What's a cool mechanical hook for the scenario? What's a good story hook for the scenario? Are you escorting or sieging or defending or whatever it is, search and rescue. So I made this massive design document that just had 100 of these scenarios all numbered, and then wrote the setting brief to download all the relevant bits of information for BattleTech for this corner of the universe, and handed those two things over to Dylan, and basically said like, "Hey, tell me an interesting story. Figure out some cool ways that it can end." And he ran with it. The resulting we use a software called Twine, which is for mapping choose your own adventure stories, basically. But the branching flowchart of that, it's very popular in video game development. The branching stories that happen off of that are entirely Dylan's like mastercraft. He would literally write a 1 paragraph intro to the scenario, which had just enough setting to explain what was going on and who was there and who cared about what and why. And then put a number like, hey, grab scenario 47 from your design document, maybe tweak it with these two little things for seasoning or to fit it better with this structure. And then when the scenario is over, here's a little 1 paragraph outro. And that literally became the waypoint outcome block that you'll read at the end of the scenario. The header block for that little sandwich became the mission briefing.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them were rewritten for just to make them fit better in that paradigm.
Sure.
It sort of split into, some of it became fiction, some of it became mission briefing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scenario chunk got kicked over to me, where I basically had a 2-sentence description and a waypoint mechanic idea, and then build that out into, here's what all the waypoints do, write them all. Here's how the scenario map looks. Here's the opposing force you're going to play. There's a big old spreadsheet that drives like how many times each model appears in the adventure and calculates all the PV ratings and everything. And then obviously figuring out a cool way to like lay out the map. So I have another like InDesign file, which is all the bits like a sandbox, and you can just kind of draw and make the map. So all 4 of those things synthesize back together to make an ACES scenario. But I was really happy that I think Dylan did a good job at the narrative level, and like we were playing through them in Twine, just like reading the intro and outro paragraphs for all the choices to, traverse the tree, and got fact checked to approve those, got Catalyst folks to approve, tone, that they were happy with like what this is going to be, how the story kind of plays out. They were real happy with it. And then I basically just got to zoom way down back into the trenches and design each scenario, being totally confident that like the way they were going to fit together was going to be fun end to end. I didn't have to think about that. And so that's really like, Dylan structuring the adventure, me writing the scenarios, Rusty polishing the fiction and the storytelling. And it was a really lovely workflow.
One of the things that we noticed, and now I've played through this twice, so a little bit of spoiler warning if anyone
Did you
hasn't
get different endings?
yet. I did get different endings.
All right.
And it's I intentionally chose a different path, and now sometimes it's dependent upon how you perform dictates what your next mission is going to be. So I started following
the battle is very much that.
Yes, and that it wound up following a similar path to an extent that John and I did in our campaign, but I made a slightly different decision. So I know, and I'm looking at our notes here. When John and I play on the channel, our 6th episode, we wound up going to the city plant, that desalination plant, because we figured we want to protect the people, and then I wound up having to make that same choice. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go to the transmitter and try and prevent anything from coming out. What I noticed in my playthrough is that Conrad Sender was at the transmitter. He wasn't at the desalination plant. And there was that, I think it was Waypoint L, that popped up because I was able to kill him, and he didn't appear in the next scenario. Where in the other way, it's like he shows up in our 7th scenario because he wasn't where we were. So I'm wondering how much, I'm assuming that was also kind of thought through in terms of where the bad guys were going to be.
Yeah, at least for the key players. Behind the curtain, I functionally assumed that they had an unlimited supply of everything else. But the Thunderbolt 2C mini is sort of, I have a running joke that the Howler is in like 14 of 21 scenarios. Like the planet, you've killed how many Howlers on this playthrough? Oh, I didn't think there was a battle mech factory on Appalachia. They're just overflowing with Howlers. They're like battle droids. Another BattleTech deep cut there for you.
Yeah, yeah. Now
Um,
we're really going back. Yeah.
yeah, to the beginning. Um, but yeah, the Howler is very. I literally did assume that they just have like enough of those, as many as the story requires, so that you have a speed bump to step on every time you fight the Jade Falcons.
It it
Um,
it was kind of nice to be able to take at least one mech out successfully
yeah,
at the beginning of each game. But it wasn't the Howler. It was the Locust was the one that
well,
was
that thing has to die.
well, the fact that it's rolling 5 sets of dice at you almost every single time it
Yep.
comes out on the table. It's just
Very fast, very overgunned, made of paper.
yeah,
It must die at the first chance you get.
pretty much. But it really invoked this fun story and the choose your own adventure part of it.
Hmm.
Also, I just again having played through it twice, it really showcases, at least for me, okay, here's the story of what's going on that we don't have a choice. So there was clearly thought put into it. I want to try and traverse the other side of that tree
Right.
to kind of see how the entire story plays out differently.
Hmm.
Because I know when my playthrough went through, I wound up doing Zellbriggen at the end, which I was
Oh, that's
not.
such a fun ending. That's my
That
favorite of the endings.
that was a fun one to play through. Um, whereas the one that John and I did, which has not been released yet as of this recording, but was played about a month and a half ago, it was just an all-out battle at the end where they kept running onto the table. Um,
Hmm.
but
Is that the one where you have the artillery? You can position the artillery.
that was not the one with the artillery.
Okay.
This is one where we put the minefields out.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're defending the city at the gates. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, the way that worked out, and again, either we're lucky with our draws on waypoints or something here, because some of the stuff would blow up. We killed a Fulcrum tank because of
Oh,
mines,
sweet.
not anything we did. Um,
Perfect. Love
but
that.
it was so cinematic the way
Yep.
it kind of came about, and it's something we really enjoyed with the system, and why we're talking about doing it again. Maybe not on camera for
Mm,
Scouring Sands, mostly because we want to play through it in a day or two instead of 2 months.
yeah.
Uh, but we're really looking forward to Snowblind when that comes out
Hmm.
because we're looking at taking our characters and our mercenary company and working our way through, and we may have a Thunderbolt 2C that's
Yep.
magically managed to join us. Um, but
Scrub out that cockpit.
we're gonna have to repaint it too. I
Yeah.
don't know that we want to keep it in those Jade Falcon colors.
Yeah. So we had a couple of goals. Like the genesis of it really was that it began with we're going to have 4 box sets. They're going to be tied to source books in the Oak
Mhm.
Clan. They're all going to be roughly in that same 2 year window. Actually, I think they're all within 6 to 9 months of each other. They're pretty tight on the timeline, all of them. So in the finest tradition of MechWarrior computer games, your lowly mercenary force actually rates a command circuit to get around. There's a set of jump chips set up like dominoes to get you from one half of the inner sphere to the other, even though otherwise you'd need, a different, you need warp drive or something from a different sci-fi franchise.
We
It's always
were
the travel time. Every time someone writes a story for BattleTech, it's the interstellar travel time that always ruins the time scale.
Mhm. It completely does because I believe for Snowblind you're on Tool or Thule is the name of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And we looked at it, that's 11 jumps away. So
yep.
we're 3 months just in travel time. Uh,
Assuming you have to recharge your jump ship, yes.
yes, assuming you have to, otherwise it's like, all right, we've arrived, move to the next one, and then,
And hence
we
my
jump
comment
again.
about the command circuit. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is possible. If you had a command circuit, you can do them all, all four.
right.
Same
Good.
mercenary company, even though they're all like within the same year and a half or something like that. Yeah.
But so we're curious because again the story that we got out of Scouring Sands was great, and the main opponent here, Jade Falcons, and all right, we've taken them out, and our mercenary company is now going into northern half of, I believe, what was at one point Karita space. So
Maybe. I'm not very familiar with the 3028 map. but I
I'm
think
not
it
familiar enough with the Ill Clan map to know what's up there now. So
so the Rosselhog,
okay,
um,
they're over on that section then.
Free Rosselhog Republic
Okay,
merges with the clan Ghost Bear to form the
yeah,
Rosselhog Dominion.
that's right.
So
That's
if you imagine a clock, from the center of the clock to the 12 in like a narrow cone
right. Hmm.
is a very long, narrow strip of space that is the Rosselhog Dominion. Um, so essentially, it's a civilian government, but the military force is a clan, which is kind of wild. Um, and the the conceit of Snowblind, it keys into the Dominion's Divided source book, which details a civil war that breaks out in the Rosselhog Dominion. So yeah, Thule is right up at the very top center of the map, close to the periphery edge where there are pirates, pretty far away from the head of government in the Rosselhog Dominion. That's important for a reason I'll get into in a minute. But basically, when Clan Wolf takes Terra and smashes what's left of the Jade Falcons who went to Terra, aside from the guys who missed the bus on
Yeah,
Appalachia, and you ended up stomping out
we took
for
care
other
of them.
reasons
Yeah.
altogether. Yeah, took care of those guys. Um, the leader of Clan Wolf, Alaric Ward, basically says like, all you clans, you should join me. I'm now the Ill Clan. I'm above all clans. Um, the Ghost Bears go and sure, yeah, we'd love to join you, but we're part of this hybrid non-clan government now. This entity, we better hold a plebiscite and make sure that everyone in the Dominion is willing to join the Ill Clan. And it comes back and it's like 51% or something. Like it's the vote is so freaking close, and they show this to Alaric Ward, who just is like, "Yeah, this is not what I'm talking about. Like your admission's denied. Um, you know, you're too divided. I don't want to deal with this." And so internally, this sets off a chain of events in the Dominion where the political lines about who wants to be on what side of that debate are not split cleanly down any force or organization. It's person to person. It's squad to squad, city to city even. And so you have this unique situation where like the military arm of the ghost bears on a given planet, half of them want one thing, half of them want the other, and then they're throwing down the gauntlet and starting duels and trials of grievance about this. Same with the political power decision makers and the power base in the Dominion. They're all split down these very different fractured lines, and old feuds are kind of coming back to head. And so whereas Scouring Sands was, we wanted to tell a story that was essentially a raid, uh, a raid with the intent to take the planet. Um, Snowblind is a garrison contract.
Hmm.
You get hired by the governor of the planet essentially to keep the peace, whatever that means. Um, Man, I can't trust my militarized Ghost Bear garrison that's supposed to be defending the most valuable battle mech factory on this corner of the sphere. Um, Also, we got this pirate problem that keeps cropping up. Like maybe you should do something about that. And so, not only is the setting very different, the sort of term of the contract very different. The branching story, the options you will be afforded at each stage of that story are structured differently. I think it's only 6 missions long, so the tree is shorter but wider.
Okay.
Still has 3 endings, but there's more stuff in the middle now. And again, about the same total number of like points you could earn for progressing your pilots is just compressed into 6 missions instead of 7. But we were very deliberate in trying to tell a different kind of story for Snowblind, or for each of the boxes, really. A different kind of contract for the mercenary player, a different overall story, so a different antagonist, which has a different military doctrine, wants to play the game differently. So as a result, I can give you a different set of aces decks, a different set of commanders, a very different experience, make it feel like it's not just rehashing Scouring Sands 3 times. And so far from what playtesters have said about Snowblind and how the writing is shaped out for Snowblind, I think Rusty has done an even better job, in part because now we've done one thing and we've got that as the reference material, as opposed to, well, I guess we'll do this. But yeah, very much trying to take the same core mechanics and do something very different with them. And so again, with the Scouring Sands, you've got the Jade Falcon is the opposing force. You're always fighting either Conrad Sender or someone who reports to him.
Right.
But Snowblind is very, very different in its progression because you have 3 different possible problems to solve a lot of the time. And the one that you choose to go for and functionally lend your support by committing your time then has a rippling effect downstream to the other scenarios you can do in the future and how
Okay.
they might play out or set up. So there are 3 factions, and you're essentially currying reputation with them.
And then
And that
depending
changes
on the
the.
paths you choose or the outcomes of your battles,
Yep.
you've just eliminated these 3 missions down the road, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and the 3 endings are sort of like, did you champion this faction or the other one?
Okay.
Not completely, but like big parts of them have that influence.
And I'm sure keywords that you gain throughout the 6
Yeah.
scenarios will help
Yep.
dictate where in there you get.
The other thing that's kind of neat about that is the last scenario in that adventure. It's always on the same map. There's
Hmm.
3 different copies of it in the book, and they all use the same table, but the objectives are different, the forces are different, and the situation is different. Because it's the story can diverge that much, but there's still this impetus that this main event was always going to happen in a cool way.
Okay. Okay. Now, see, now I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on Snowblind.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm excited. I think people are going to be impressed by how different it is.
okay. Well, just based on the fact that we've got some new factions, essentially, is that going to
New
amount
commanders
to?
that play differently. Yep.
So, is there going to be like 3 sets of 2 commander cards? Kind of representing each
3 in
faction,
total.
or
You get
it'll
3
be three
commanders in
total.
total. You get 2 different Ghost Bear characters, and you get a pirate character.
Okay. Which then mimic the like 2 Ghost Bear factions and then the pirate group in there.
Yeah, I think we were pretty consistent about using, if I remember correctly, just like the Jade Falcon ones. One's like a Mech Warrior rank, he's a
Hmm.
little bit rookie. The other one is a more experienced Ghost Bear commander. I'm pretty sure in the story, I could be wrong about this because it's been a hot minute since I worked on this box. Um, but the higher ranking Ghost Bear commander is on one side of the conflict. I think they're on the joiner side of the political agreement.
Hmm.
And the lower ranking one, who's still pretty high ranking, but like the second in command on the planet, is on the other side. And so I'm pretty sure we use the 2 decks pretty consistently for one or the other. And certainly there is a scenario where they're both on the table at the same time.
Well, so that was going to be the next question. Is there
Yeah,
scenarios where you've
there are
got?
some 3-way battles in the box.
Okay, so now, because that brings up an interesting question, then will you have a portion of like that scenario where you have aces from one faction fighting against the aces on the other faction and
Yep.
you at the same time?
Yep.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, that scenario occurs like a little bit later in the box because again, if we assume that like this is not a standalone or this is not an expansion to Scouring Sands, this
Hmm.
is another standalone expansion to Alpha Strike. If you imagine Alpha Strike as the video game console, each Aces box is the cartridge you pop in the top.
Okay, yeah.
Is a pretty good way of contemplating it. So again, like it's got it's got the Aces rulebook in the box again. It's got its own campaign book. It's got its own full set of decks, tokens, terrain, the works. Very similar volume and type of components. But the only thing that's the same in both boxes is some pages of the rulebook are identical. Most of them are a little different. We got some quality of life edits and clarifications in
Hmm.
after reading Scouring Sands feedback from it being out in the wild. And then the other thing that's the same is the first punchboard sheet that has the turn track, the edge
Hmm.
tokens, and the like waypoint tokens. Those are the same. We didn't change those, but
And
everything else is all different.
we can always use more edge tokens.
And you will by the time you play 4 campaigns worth of stuff with those mercenaries.
Yeah, we've got one of our pilots, which is now skill 3, working his way towards skill 2. But
That guy will be a beast.
I know that at Adepticon there was one new ability that was shown, so I'm assuming we have a whole new suite of
12
abilities
new
that we
ones.
can
We
add.
designed 48 and put 12 in each box.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, they're all different in every box set, and they tie in thematically to the setting.
Okay.
For example, um, in Wrath and Reprisal, the third box, it is set on a much more. There's more water on the planet, and so one of the edge abilities helps you navigate water better.
Okay.
Like some stuff like that. Snowblind, for example, has one that is also there's sort of a loose mechanical sub theme through all of them too. Of like, not only are we doing the campaign stuff, but here is a couple of cool rules from Alpha Strike, from Commander's Edition, or from other supplements
Mhm.
that work well thematically with this set. So the sub theme for Scouring Sands being the first was really just hover vehicles and getting all of the hover decks in there, getting the vehicle rules, getting you familiar with infantry
Mhm.
specifically. Snowblind has more of a focus on artillery specifically.
Okay.
And so one of the new edge decks, for example, is a unit that's designed to shoot artillery. I think it has a long tom. Or, yeah, one of the cardboard tokens is a mobile long tom. So that makes an appearance somewhere. This is a
Okay.
self-propelled big vehicle with a gigantic artillery cannon on top. You're meant to park it somewhere and then hope no one comes near you.
Pretty sure we've got one of those, off to the side that we're gonna have to paint up. So, uh,
Yep.
but I'm really looking forward to the fact that we've got a branching story with three different groups of AI units, and I want to
Hmm.
see that fight in the middle.
Yep.
And I think it would be absolutely amusing to have two snowblind boxes and just increase the sheer size of it. But I'm gonna I'm gonna get it's because this is the craziness that is me. But I'm gonna guess that it's kind of balanced for just the one box.
Mm,
So
yeah, it probably is going to be. I mean, the scenarios will get substantially longer if you scale
mhm.
them up, and also probably a lot bloodier for your mercenary company. I imagine your repair bills will skyrocket if you have to field more units and they get more of a pounding.
That's one thing I think again we got fortunate at throughout our campaign. It was never really that bad. Um, then
Well,
again,
Did you play on normal though?
we did decide to play on standard because we started looking at like, well, we have to pick some place to go. Let's start it on standard and then
Hmm.
see where we go. And I think we got through the first three missions and kind of said we probably should have ratcheted this up.
Yep.
Uh,
It
so
does start off. It does start off gently for sure,
yeah.
but um, I had a very interesting conversation with Randall and Ray Arastia at Catalyst um, after we had designed the full game and run some end-to-end playtests on the adventure. Um, I played through my first full campaign through playthrough of Aces was with two guys who are really prolific Alpha Strike players. Both of them have played in tournaments. One of them is CDT.
Mhm.
Um, does a lot of big events. Like has played in like Southern Assault and whatnot. Like some of the big Alpha Strike tournaments. Very competitive Alpha Strike player. Knows all the units. Will min max a force. We brought a pretty tuned up force. It wasn't like tier one competitive, but it was certainly there. You
Mhm.
know, we had a pulse laser J Edgar hover tank, for example. Like, you know, this is one of the best statted units in Alpha Strike you can get because it's so points efficient. So a whole force like that, and we played through the whole campaign. And at the end of it, I think we had a surplus of about 500 PV. So we netted
Wow.
ourselves about supply points rather. Like
Yeah.
we came very close to zero sum, and we lost I think one or two units that we replaced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the whole mercenary contract, we had almost no profit to show for our
For
endeavors.
the entire work. Yeah. But
And
you were
the
probably not
original
playing on standard.
tuning for the campaign,
Yeah.
all those scenarios that we played that way, we were like, wow, if the three of us are really like experienced Alpha Strike players and we have this ending, like more casual BattleTech players going to be crushed. And so I had this conversation with Ray and Randall of like, who's the target audience for this, and where should the starting difficulty bar be set?
Mhm.
Because what we played it on is what is now elite. Functionally, it's somewhere between veteran elite and elite. The math doesn't quite work out.
Okay.
Essentially, what I then did at that point was just multiply I just put a flat percentage multiplier on all of the rewards for the campaign,
Yeah.
and then a flat percentage multiplier on all of the player force sizing, and just like made the game a little bit friendlier because now you've got like an extra mech you can bring, so
Hmm.
you out firepower your opponent by a little bit, and then you get a little bit more money so that you can build a bank even if your repair bills are high for a scenario. You're likely to still be able to pay all your pilots. You're likely still to be able to afford replacement units if they get destroyed, and you'll probably finish a campaign with something like 1,000 surplus in the war chest, and that feels pretty good.
Hmm.
Uh, but there's a reason why that difficulty table in the campaign setup is presented as like, hey, do you know how to play aces in Alpha Strike? You probably should not be on normal.
Yeah, we're
It's
gonna
still really fun. Like, I think the game is a really fun cinematic narrative experience at normal, and
good.
it's not too like stressful. But if you want a challenging tactical puzzle where the threat of screwing up a roll or mispositioning a model means that you go into debt,
Yeah.
you should play on Elite. It's
Uh,
it's real gritty.
in my
Normal is
playthrough,
a
I
Hollywood
think I
movie.
did two scenarios at Legendary and then said, "This is not."
This is insane. Yeah, it should be.
It was. I'm not. My pilots are getting nothing. I mean,
Hmm.
and I have mechs that are no longer going on the table the next scenario.
Yeah,
So I quickly adjusted myself down in that second playthrough. But I know there's adjustments also as you move on when you've hit so many experience points with your pilots to adjust down, and so
which
we will
yeah,
at
I
least
think
be doing that.
yeah, those are, if I remember correctly, not possible to get on your first playthrough with the same force. You probably won't encounter them until you either run the same campaign again with the same pilots,
Hmm.
like New Game Plus, basically, or you take them to another box set.
Hmm.
And in addition to having in my playtest groups for the other boxes, I have some people who are playing fresh who are never, well, I don't know if any of them will never have played Aces at this point, but I have a few people playing fresh as if you're starting off with that box and that's the first one.
Hmm.
And I have one guy playing, or two people now, I think, playing through on New Game Plus. They've played Scouring Sands. They're using
Hmm.
that force to play through later boxes. And I have someone who's doing New Game Plus Plus, which is playing the third box, having done the first and second.
Okay.
So that guy has a couple of skill 2 units, and some of his units have like 3 abilities and 6 edge. And they're just like, every trick I can do, cool. That super nimble mech that you put over there that's gonna be hard to delete. No, I just deleted it. Hey,
We
is the scenario still fun? Does it still work? Oh yeah, it still works.
we have been having a little bit of fun with coolant flush. That was
Oh yeah, that's a
been
good one.
definitely a lifesaver at times
Hmm.
for our games. But again, it just goes in with the narrative experience. We've been thoroughly enjoying it. I'm pretty sure we are leveraging an edge point almost every single shot just to get that one extra point of damage. But
Yep.
it's just been a totally enjoyable experience and something that we want to do again. And I think that
Love it.
right there talks to how well put together this product is. And having played some of the classic stuff and trying to understand like the Hinterlands Hotspots book
Mm.
and some of the mercenary components on there, we would almost rather love to just stay within the Aces concept because it's a lot easier to
I
follow
I
from that
think the
perspective.
two systems are likely to grow together over time.
Hmm.
Some of the stuff that was in Aces made its way into Hotspot's Draconis Reach, and they also did some errata and some cleanup of the
Hmm.
Chaos Campaign mercenaries in
Yeah.
Draconis Reach. It's a big improvement having now played both. Some folks at my local game store ran a Hinterlands campaign for a little while, so I've played it. I'm familiar
Hmm.
with it, but that's pretty much the only classic I'm playing at the moment. Like outside of the scale of playing, or playing a couple of scale 1 or scale 2. So like, what is it, 6,000 BV, couple of mechs, couple of
6,000 would
mechs
be
and some
scale two.
tanks.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Other than playing at that scale, I haven't really played much classic.
Well, it's no fun
Even a
unless
bit.
you're fielding an entire company with classic and needing to take a day and a half to go through, like 15 minutes of actual
Sure.
combat time. So,
Yep.
so now we've talked about, aces. We've talked about what's coming up. We've got three new boxes that are at some point will show up with, I believe, the next one. Rumor has it around Gen Con this year.
I mean,
So,
I hope so. It's I've seen proofs for it I've seen manufacturing samples for it from the factory. Like it's in mid manufacturing now, and barring some weird shipping issue, we should have it in hand Gen Con, or if not a little sooner, which means it's probably in retail by September.
So that'll be great because that'll be perfect for us to go ahead and get that filmed up and then and running into onto our channel. So we're looking
Nice.
forward to getting that and then presenting that. Um, oh, by the way, I have been watching Mech 7, the second season, and I have been enjoying that.
Yeah. I mean, I've
Uh,
been watching your stuff too,
oh, well,
as you
thank you.
posted on BGG.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we get it out there. We're trying to finish that final episode, and it's so much little stuff. In
Yeah, I
terms of
bet.
just getting that all together and the amount of post production that we do on it to try and
Hmm.
keep the narrative going with it is
Yeah,
we cut
built
out.
up.
I'll give you this part of it. So when we film our episodes, the movement bit that you see is probably only about 20 minutes. Uh,
Yeah,
we cut about 40 minutes out of each movement phase, especially at the
sure.
beginning when everything comes out. 'Cause no one wants
Hmm.
to see us measuring it out, figuring it out. That said, with Mech 7, when I see you, you're like, well, it wants to go over there, and then you guys just have it down there. I don't know how much live editing is done, but
Not
you
a
guys are
lot.
moving pretty quick with that. So,
Not a lot. Most turns in Mech 7, I can usually look at the card while they're deliberating on the table.
mhm.
Like, because I'll look at what's coming up on the, because I'm running it as a GM
Yeah.
basically, right? So I'm behind the screen. I already know all the units that are about to move. I've pre-cooked all the targeting numbers, or not TNs, but like target priorities,
Mhm.
and I know now I've memorized every mech in the player force. So I know who has the highest. I know who's going to be tied for TMM all the time.
Yeah.
I then just look at the table and I know which one's closer, and I can shortcut it. I would say I think I may have made a mistake or two here in running the decks on Mech 7, but like in service of narrative, it worked out well. We had some genuine moments on that show in both seasons that could not have been scripted. Um, the event that happens in the pilot episode with Randall's mech for season 2, like we went into production assuming he was going to be driving the same mech the whole time. He does not. So the amount of like, and I hope it looks seamless watching it from
Oh my!
the finished
I
production. But
laugh
like
so
we,
hard because that's where he spent the edge point to re-roll
yeah,
the critical to be an engine and wound up being an ammo hit, and then
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
that was
yeah. We could not have scripted that better. That was too funny.
no,
But like
but
behind the scenes, in between each episode, we were pivoting the story. We were like rewriting. Like we basically filmed 2 RP sessions and a game every day.
mhm.
Uh, we did the we did the game in the morning, and then the next 2 RPs after it, which gave us the evening to modify the next day's table for the game, and then we just shot it like that. So it took us about 6 days, I think, to shoot the whole series.
Yeah,
Um, but like there were significant edits. Like we'd finish playing the battle section,
yeah.
and then we would have to like retcon a bunch of things that were planned for the RP, because like we planned out this whole world, and the first thing that happens is Big Red is part of the game
Yeah,
and completely derails whatever RP you had planned.
I, it's very well done. I'm enjoying it, and it's the moments like that that make it all worth it. So,
Yeah, it was
it,
really fun.
those moments are in the Aces products, and it puts a smile on our face. And as soon as our seventh one is released,
Mm.
there'll be a couple things in there that you go, well, that was unexpected,
I mean,
because
as
of
much
course
as
it
I'd like
happens
to
at the
take
end.
credit for that in Aces, I think that's very much just that is the experience of playing BattleTech.
Yes,
Randall likes to say every dice roll tells a story, and in Classic, absolutely. In Alpha Strike, I see it as well.
yeah, it's there. It's there, especially when you're rolling one die per damage point. Uh,
Yes.
but but again, that's how all these are put together, and it brings together everything you wanted. You get your choose your own adventure, you get your narrative story on your 4 different plants, you get to follow
Hmm.
the mercenary team that you get to create over all these boxes, and all in all, it's an enjoyable experience. So, and Josh, on behalf of several people on the planet that play Alpha Strike, thank you, because this has been Absolute hoot. And thank you very much for agreeing to come on to Ion Radio and talk about, a whole bunch of things from heroes to snapship tactics to Alpha Strike. And we even brought up the Terminator game, which was kind of neat as
Yeah,
well.
that's a bit of a deep cut from my own past, but it's a
So
good one. Still
was
good. I still get that out and play it sometimes.
I keep looking for the Rise of the Resistance expansion, which is a harder one to come by. Well, I've been eyeing that the
It's
entire.
the one that has me on the cover. Oh goodness. But
Uh,
yes.
was there anything else you wanted to bring up while we've got you here, or things you want to?
No, I think we did a pretty deep dive on stuff. I think you're going to have 2 episodes of content to cut out here.
I think I might. So thank you for all your time, Josh. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun for me. And please keep on making this stuff because we just enjoy playing it.
I'd love to hear that. That's perhaps the best compliment I can get. Well,
All
thank you
right,
so much.
everyone. Again, this was my special guest, Josh Derksen, who came on to talk about everything that he's done from Linvander Studios and before, along with
And
what may or
after.
may not be coming up. So, but again, thank you, Josh, for joining us. And until next time, everyone, don't forget to like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Check Josh and all his stuff out over at Linvander. All right, everyone. So until next time, I'm Ken. This is Josh, and you've been watching Ion Radio.
All right, once again, a huge shout out to Josh for coming out into the channel and spending about 2.5, 3 hours with me. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this dive into Aces and all the other worlds that Josh has been a driving force behind. So go check out the Ion Radio playthrough of the entire Scouring Sands campaign. You can see how it got us to this point. If you did enjoy this interview and like to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to be notified when we drop new content. Our patrons were able to suggest a few questions for this interview, as well as name some of the mech warriors that were involved in our campaign. If you're interested in becoming a patron, a link down below. Finally, don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and join our Discord where you can chat with me and John directly. All right, until next time, everyone, I'm Ken, and you've been watching Ion Radio.